Young people are eager to participate in assessing the programs with which they're involved. It enables young people to express their expertise. It enables adults to get more legitimate information in order to be able to make better decisions. It is a form of social development for young people. Young people grow through the experience. We know that young people are eager to do this kind of work, and when they do, it can have many, many benefits for them and for the community. I want to start with one question. It's really the key question that I hope that you'll consider and that you'll maybe take back to the group that you work with. And that is, should your group, should your organization, should your community have a strategy for involving young people in assessing the work of the group? And if so, what would it be? If you are a youth group, for example, that's part of a larger adult organization, should you have a strategy for evaluating the work of the organization? And if so, what would it be? Or if you are an adult advisor to an organization that has young people, or maybe doesn't have young people and aspires to have young people being part of it, should you have a strategy for doing this work? And if so, what should it be? So the focus today is on involving young people in evaluation as an integral part of what is being referred to as powerful programming. Powerful programming is an approach that involves people in the decisions that affect their lives. So here's two examples. Young leaders in the community and a group of adults who are allies decide that they want to assess youth attitudes toward educational disparities in your area. For example, you know that some schools are among the top producers of high achievers who go on to college. And then there are other schools who, for whatever the reasons, probably because they don't have the resources that they need, don't have students who are going on to college. In fact, many of them are dropping out before they get to their sophomore or junior year in high school. And you're concerned about these disparities. That's a social justice question. And you say to yourself, well, why don't we gather some information to see if other people also care about these kinds of disparities? You think that they do, but you don't really have any information. So what you do is you start talking to one another, those of you who care. A few of you come together and start talking. And then you reach out and put together a little committee. And then you go out and you reach out to others, not only other young people, but also some of the adults who you know are sympathetic. Those of you who are youth leaders know who your adult allies are. You know who the adults are who draw you toward them. I wouldn't ask other adults to identify adults at all. They probably give you the wrong adults. I would go to the ones that I already know and I would ask them, would you be willing to be part of this? And I'd start putting together an intergenerational group. I'd probably have a few meetings. We'd start to put together a plan of action. What are we going to do? And then we would think, well, what do we want to learn? We want to go out to the schools and ask questions. We think about what the questions are. We come up with 5 questions we know that we want to answer. We write them down. These are our questions. We start fanning out to the schools and asking these questions. So you're going to do an interview, and you're going to do a group meeting, like a focus group. Maybe you'll do a survey. And then you gather the information together, and now you're developing this picture of what people think. And bam, what you see is, we got a problem here. People really care about this, and then you make a report and you start presenting it to different groups in the community, and before you know it, there's this movement going, and you decide to have this big regional meeting. Let's bring people from the neighborhoods and the suburbs together who care about educational justice. And let's have a meeting and talk about this. And maybe out of that would come the first declaration by young people about strengthening excellence in education in the schools. And it's the voice of the experts, because no one can tell a young person what they think any better than the young person. Youth are experts on being youth, right? Adults are not experts on being youth. Adults have an approach too, but youth are the only experts. So when they say what they think, no one can tell them that they're not the experts on what they think. So there's an example of what I would call information gathering, knowledge development. It's one form of evaluation, but it's not separate from the action that people want to take. It's an integral part of the action. Young people know about evaluation because they're evaluated all the time, usually by adults, and often dislike it. The reason young people do not usually like the word evaluation is because it's not practiced appropriately for them. At its simplest, evaluation asks these three questions. What are we trying to accomplish? How well are we doing? How could we improve? That's evaluation. We are asking those questions all the time. Too often, evaluation is when technical experts come in from outside and they tell us what they think of us. You may need an expert, if you decide to help you with some aspect of this. I don't know what it would be. Someone might say, oh, you're not asking them in the right way or using the right language. Well, that's not true. It may be that there are ways to improve your questions as you get more experience and you could ask for help. The problem is those skills are often held by technical experts. The uppers have a way of thinking about things, and they often want to keep them from the lowers. I'm using that term uppers and lowers. You can read into it. I know it's an oversimplification, but it's really a social justice way of thinking about this. We view evaluation as a community process. It's when people come together and gather information for the purpose of changing things, of improving the situation. Participatory evaluation is when people come together and assess a situation of which they are a part. And the people are involved at every stage in the process, from conceiving it to getting organized, to putting a plan together, to gathering the information. It's more than an event. It's a process over time and builds capacity in the long haul. You don't just do it once. You do it on an ongoing basis. Young people are experts. There is no legitimate information without experts who are speaking for themselves. That's what an expert is. Information is more legitimate. That's one of the reasons we do it. No one can tell you what you are thinking. Only you can say that. It's good for engaging young people in the community. It's also a means of development for people. Hey, when I am involved in evaluation, I get some new knowledge, I get some new skills, I develop my own competencies, it helps me to become more of a leadership person. I learn to get up and make presentations to people. All of those are part of the positive aspects of this for young people. But one final one I would just mention in terms of why. It's your right to do this. You have a right to gather information. Too often, young people have been conditioned by other people to think they don't have a right to do. They're not competent. They can't do this. That is just not true. You have a right to gather this information. Adults have a responsibility to be helpful because young people should not be expected to do this work alone. We were involved for 5 years in a project around the United States where community organizations were asked to try to increase youth participation in their work. So they were in very segregated and disinvested communities. So the South Bronx was one of them, the Mississippi Delta was one of them, Oakland, California. You know, there were these communities we were working. Each of the groups decided they wanted to increase their evaluation. They asked one of their members to be the chief evaluator for the group. None of them had ever had this role before. Some places it was a young person, some places it was an adult. One thing I'll say, none of them had any experience as being an evaluator. We helped them know that they could evaluate. They put together an evaluation committee of young people with a couple of adults. It was really intergenerational. They developed a plan, a 5-year plan. Every year they went out and gathered information both in their group and in the community. They had meetings to take action on the information that they developed. And then each of them wrote a report, so there'd be a written record of this. We would also bring all those evaluators together and give them whatever it would be that they would need. Mostly they just needed to meet each other, to talk about the problems that they had and then help each other to solve the problem. In each situation, success was built on youth leaders. There were young people who wanted to do this work. They're yearning to do this kind of work, as long as it is part of taking action and improving the situation. They just haven't had the opportunity to do it. If there's anything you come away with today in terms of capacity building, what I would say is, who is a person or two persons in your group or in your community who will take responsibility for being the evaluator? Some of you, I bet, could point to the person across the table. And it may be two people. Two is better than one, by the way, because when people do things together, you can do more together than any one of us can acting alone. The second is adults. You need to have at least one adult who young people take as their allies. And the young people can tell you who that adult is. Think about who in your organization is an adult who works well with young people, because many, if not most, adults do not work well with young people. Something happens along the way. The final thing is what I would call just intergenerational work. We shouldn't expect any one group to deal with an intractable social problem on their own. With that, I am done. All I want to say is that this is going to be a very practical day. You're going to get some real tools and techniques that I hope will be helpful to you. We have this whole team who really are committed to this, and it's just a real pleasure. I want to say have a great day, and thank you. I think that involving young people in work of this type, it's good for them. It's good for their community. It helps to develop young people as leaders. It prepares them for being good citizens, and it's their right to do this. So for all of those reasons, it's important. And they are the experts about being themselves, so we need their voice to be at the table.
We know best. I mean, in the same way that anyone knows best about who they are as a person and who they are as like a group, I guess you could say. It would be completely ineffective and counterproductive to not have that voice of the people who you're affecting, to like in the process of like creating that.
Some adults they're not happy letting youth take leadership because we're younger and have less experience, which is true to an extent. But a lot of times, you know, youth have great ideas, and we have a lot more energy too.
We have issues, we have problems that only youth can speak about because they happen to us. So I think that the issues they're real.